We'll bring the meeting of the City of Pittsburg Commission to order with a flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll open the meeting today with public input. Do we have, please?
Mayor and Commissioners, I guess not so much public input, but I did want to talk a little bit about the changes that have happened in the room here. You might have noticed some things, all right? Obviously, there's a new carpet. These carpets are in 2-foot squares. It's much easier to clean and repair and replace. There's also there's a lot of wiring stuff you don't see that the carpet covers. There's some sawed out areas of the cement that had to be put in for new wiring for a lot of the new equipment you'll see. You'll notice the cameras are new. These are all high definition cameras, so sorry. And, that'll also make it easier for us to stream. That's a good idea. To stream live, which we'll be starting to do within the next couple of meetings. All right, we'll start streaming it live. There's also brand new sound systems that you'll see here. The sound was problematic in this room, and we've narrowed it down. We have much more control over it. One of the things you don't see is the dais. Well, the dais is going to be reconfigured. We're working on different designs right now. There's some constraints because the wall here has to come out. There's very little. The purpose of the new dais will be to allow you to have a better view of yourselves, allow Darren to have a better view of everybody on the commission. So that's taking a little while to get the design right, and that'll happen sometime in February. That dais will include embedded monitors, so you'll all have monitors, individual monitors, in front of you with the new furniture that you'll get as well. So I just wanted to. Any questions or concerns? I think you've all gotten a little primer on how to use the mics and how that works. So, and I do want to let you know that. All this is new. This is the first time we've done this, so there might be a little bit of issues, and we'll be working through those over the next month or so. Anyway, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Any more public input?
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Monica Mernan. I live at 1313 Mallory Court here in Pittsburgh. I wanted to come to you this evening to address the commission as a whole. First of all, congratulations to Commissioner McNally. It's a nice sound to it. And I'm here this evening as the newly re-elected representative in the Kansas legislature for the 3rd District, which includes all of the city of Pittsburgh. I'm here tonight just to, again, say hello and to reiterate my commitment to serving the community of Pittsburgh as your representative, but also just to touch base as the session begins next Monday. And we have a 90-day session coming up, which hopefully will be 90 days, not 115. And really looking forward to the fact that Darren is representing the city with the Kansas League of Municipalities. That is a very visible group in the State House. And so looking forward to working with Darren in his leadership role there. I also wanted to let all of you know that I will be serving on 3 committees that all, in my opinion, have potential for a positive impact for the city of Pittsburgh. There's a newly formed committee in the House called Rural Revitalization, and I will be serving on that. Additionally, I will continue as ranking minority member on Health and Human Services, which, of course, we like to position ourselves as a regional healthcare hub. And so many different bills and issues regarding scope of work come through that committee. So I'm really pleased to be there. And then finally, the social service budget, which encompasses the Department of Children and Families, KDADS, the Department of Aging and Disability Services, the state hospitals, a broad range of services that are very important to our community. So I look forward to, as I like to say when I'm in committee, the bottom right-hand corner, what that looks like. Hello. And
goodbye.
You know, at Chuck, Commissioner Munsell, in Topeka, when that happens, that means you bring treats the next day. So I'm sure you would be happy to do that. Yeah, I have brought many a treat myself. So I just wanted to come by and let you know that I'm around. You can always contact me on my cell phone number. Tammy has it, Darren has it, everybody has it. And then also to offer that if there is any truly anything I can do to help, I'm here. So thanks for the few moments.
Thank you, Monica. We appreciate you being our advocate in Topeka. We'll move, any other public input? Seeing none, we close public input and proceed with reorganization of Board of Commissioners. First item is mayor elected from members of the governing body.
I move to elect Patrick O'Brien as mayor.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this is where I come down.
You get to swear.
Mm-hmm. I can do that.
Yeah.
Raise your hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of mayor
of mayor
for the city of Pittsburg,
for the
Kansas.
city of Pittsburg, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have the presentation of the ceremonial gavel to outgoing Mayor Jeremy Johnson, who's standing back at the back. Jeremy, thank you for all your service that you've given the community. We appreciate it. We look forward to more service in Gerard.
Look forward to working with you guys in a new capacity. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And now we need to elect the president of the Board of Commissioners, and they will be elected from the members of the governing body. I'll open the process by nominating Don McNay.
I second that.
Any other motions? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of Don being the president of the Board of Commissioners, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Don, we need to swear you in now. It's your turn to swear.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of President of the Board
of President of the Board
for the city of Pittsburg, Kansas.
for the city of Pittsburg, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wants to delete? Seeing none, I move for a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to approve. I second.
We have a move and second. Roll call vote.
Chenoweth? Aye. McNally?
Aye.
McNay?
Aye.
Munsell?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye. And with that, we have special presentations. The first one up is the electrical utility update.
Mayor and Commissioners, I believe Jay is going to join us up here at the table with Jerry Warren. He's the consultant that we hired back on October 9th. Just a quick recap, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who will introduce Jerry, and Jerry will walk you through his presentation. We've been working on our finances in the city ever since I've been here. In 2015 and 16, as you recall, we do a 5-year financial forecast, and we look for areas where we may have concern that we have expenditure areas where the revenues are probably not going to be enough to cover it, and so we're looking at tax increases. We do this for employees, raises, and things like that, so we can bring it to your attention ahead of time. We also look at things like health insurance and property and liability insurance and some other large cost centers. Electricity is one that we look at as well. As we looked at electricity, it became clear that we needed a strategy going forward to control those costs. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at increases that are going to require tax increases. And quite frankly, the 6 years that I've been here, there's no commissions that have been real excited about tax increases, so we try to limit those whenever we can. With that being said, we had some pretty good meetings with Westar back in May and June of 2016, talking about alternatives, things that we could do. We moved from those meetings into a study period where the staff, myself, Jay, I think Commissioner Munsell joined us on several occasions, and we went to Kansas City and studied microgrids and looked at options, and we met with KMEA and the Kansas Power Pool and other entities about how we could control these costs, things that we could do here at the city to improve our ability to continue to have electricity and pay for it and not make it something that's just so burdensome to the businesses specifically, because economic development is critical for us, but also to the individuals that live here at their residences. Eventually, we rolled into the idea that we needed a stakeholders group, that it wasn't enough just for 3 or 4 of us at the city to be looking at this. So we identified some stakeholders, asked them to join us. We've had Sunflower Electric, who's a power producer and provider, the Kansas Power Pool, I believe GRDA, and I'm trying to think who else came up and presented to the group, usually for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And Michael Gray was on initially. He left. Patrick O'Brien joined us as the second commissioner. And we continue to educate ourselves on the process. We even went a step further and identified a feasibility study that we wanted to have done. So we had a subcommittee of finance people. We were very fortunate to have the time of the Pitt State's CFO joined us. The hospital's CFO joined us. USD 250 had a representative who's a CFO of a local company that represented USD 250's interest, joined us. And that group went through 4 or 5 RFP responses that we had for a feasibility study and helped us understand where we were and what we were being asked to pay for. And while we were considering coming to you and asking you to spend up to $150,000 on a feasibility study, the feedback we got from the interviews was that it probably wouldn't be the best money we spent, that for a variety of reasons, any value that we put on our asset here in Pittsburgh would be a negotiated asset at some point if we ever did get to the point that we wanted to approach Westar about starting our own utility. And so that probably wouldn't be the best money spent. We could probably do that some other ways that were cheaper. So we backed off, took another run at it. And what we ended up with, and what we came to you with, I believe, in October, the first week of October, was the idea of hiring somebody that had a lot of expertise, that isn't necessarily a one-person shop, but a much smaller shop. And for what we were hoping was $20,000 or $25,000, we could get a very important feasibility study done at a much higher level that would give us some confidence that we needed to continue to move forward. This is definitely something that eventually is going to cost money. It's going to continue to take up time. The time isn't so bad because I know Jay enjoys it. Dr. Bailey is very, very good at this and enjoys it, but and I don't mind it, but it's definitely going to get expensive at some point. So with that, we checked around. We ran across this gentleman called Jerry Warren, very nice guy, was willing to come up here, spend about a month or two. And with that, we've asked Mr. Warren to join us today. He's going to present his findings. Keep in mind, we didn't pay $2 million for this report, so it's a high-level report for a reason. We ended up paying, I think, about $23,000. He's in here today to walk you through it and answer your questions, and appreciate your time, appreciate his time, and I can't say enough about Jay and Dr. Bailey and the group that's volunteered their time from the university, the hospital, and around the stakeholders group to let us get to this point. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say. And Jay, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, finding people who are experts at this was not an easy task. I mean, there are people. This isn't done very often. I mean, that a municipality considers its options to the depth that we're considering them here, and we were in finding the appropriate resources was a bit of a task. The American Public Power Association was very helpful in that regard. There were a lot of potential resources there. Jerry's name came up in a number of cases, all with very positive comments and feedback. To find someone who's actually done done this kind of work before, looked at moving a city from an investor-owned utility to its own, to find someone who's actually done that, as well as someone who's actually run the utility subsequent to that, was really kind of lucky for us. We thought we felt very happy to find someone of Jerry's skills and knowledge. The purpose, of course, was once again to give us more information so we could go further down this road to find out what our options were and what we should be doing at this stage. And again, we still are all uncovering more information. We're finding learning a lot, and you know, this is really a step we were looking at to find out, do we want to go down to really the next step that we're facing, which would be a more substantial commitment of funds. So we really needed to take a deep dive into this with someone with the level of experience that Jerry brings to the table. So we're glad he was able to carve out his time. You retired? No, not
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired.
I wasn't until I met you guys.
So we pulled him back in. All right. Like the mafia, we pulled him back in. But we're glad he's able to spend his time and share his expertise with us. And I think he has some very interesting information that we really would have been hard for us to achieve elsewhere. So, go ahead, Jay.
Mr. Mayor, it's my pleasure to be here. When I was here the first time at the end of November and beginning of December, the airport was shut down the day before in Kansas City because of snow. So it was this is better weather. So I can figure this technology out here from beginning. Is that right? Perfect. Why are we here? You know, we sort of have a flow to the presentation here, and the first thing is, what in the world are we doing here? The city of Pittsburgh wants to consider owning and operating its own electric utility for a number of reasons. To improve its local competitive position in economic development, local rate control, and control of the local infrastructure for the benefit of the community. I've been involved in public power for 46 years now. About half of that time I worked for a city-owned electric utility, City of Gainesville, Florida for 13 years, and also for Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park is the community Jay mentioned that did a lot similar situation to what you're doing. They had a franchise agreement that gave them the right to purchase. I led the feasibility study, and they moved forward and formed the municipal utility, and I was later hired as its electric utility director, and so I ran it for 8 years. So I've seen both sides. I'm a fan of public power, and if you get me talking about public power, I'll turn into a cheerleader really, really quickly. And the reason that I do is you guys sit up here a couple of Tuesday nights every month. You're the board of directors for the electric utility if you decide to move forward with an electric utility. And so your customers, your citizens have the right to come up here at this podium and complain to you, to offer suggestions to you, and you sit here and you listen to them. And cities are incredible at listening to their citizens and then being creative and doing things that positively influence the community. You can't do that with an investor-owned utility. You basically have to go before your corporate commission, public corporate commission, or in our case in Florida, the Florida Public Service Commission. Air your beefs there, and the utility may or may not hear you. This is, to me, powerful when you guys locally control your utility. So I'm a fan, and so I understand the desire to improve your competitive position with regard to economic development, your desire to control the infrastructure, all to make Pittsburgh a better place to live. There's one question, it's sort of the burning question. Is this a worthwhile effort for the city that we should continue to spend money and time on it, or should we abandon it? And basically, that's why I was brought in, to help answer that question. You should know that the Kansas state law gives you the right to purchase the electric facilities within the city of Pittsburgh, and I have been retained to help you answer the question to analyze the financial feasibility. You know, Jay went on about me for a long time, and so I won't bore you with that. It's a lot of it here on this slide. I've been doing what I've been doing for 46 years. I've actually participated in over 20 financial feasibility studies to create municipal utilities. Some natural gas that actually went forward and created the gas utility, and a couple electric. And it's not done very often, as Jay mentioned. I've been doing that for 46 years. About half the time I worked for the utility, and about half the time I worked as a consultant. As Jay mentioned, I'm not really a one-man shop. I have a partner. His name is Bill Harrington. He used to be the senior vice president at Orlando Utilities Commission, which is one of the largest municipal utilities in the country. He headed up their electric operation, and so he and I sort of have developed an expertise, I guess, on doing these kinds of analysis, and we've been working very well for a long time. We had our scope of work. Jay said, I think it was Darren said, you guys paid about $23,000. From my point of view, you know, you got a $100,000 study for about $23,000. You didn't get a 70-page report. You got a management briefing, and you're getting the presentation tonight that summarizes the results of our analysis. And actually, in my opinion, even if you had paid for the full-blown study, the accuracy of the financial analysis would have been exactly the same. And so, you know, what did you get over and above it? Well, normally we would come to town 5 or 6 times. We did an awful lot of our meetings on the phone. We used GoToMeeting and did internet stuff. And so it was, we looked for creative ways to try to keep the cost down, and I think we were able to accomplish that. Specifically, we were asked to develop a 20-year cash flow, basically of all the revenues and the cost associated with you owning and operating your own electric utility over a 20-year period. We were asked to analyze the regional power supply cost, and you're going to learn in a minute that I'm going to tell you that that represents 65% of your cost. So if that's 65% of your cost, you have to pay attention to that. And so, you know, we did some evaluation of the marketplace here. We also performed what I call a screening level severance and reintegration analysis. You've got Westar Energy here, Evergy now, that is providing service here in and outside of the city of Pittsburgh. Should you decide to move forward and create your own electric utility, at the end of the day, there's going to have to be a city of Pittsburgh electric system that serves its customers from facilities that it owns, and Westar, of course, will have to be able to continue to provide service to their customers from facilities that they own. Well, when we do the 20-year cash flow analysis, there is a cost associated with that. We call it severance and reintegration because you're severing the wires inside versus outside, and most of the time you have to build some additional facilities to be able to separate the two electric systems. So that's, you'll hear me refer to that as severance and reintegration, and that's a number that we have estimated. We did a very significant field review of the facilities here in the Pittsburgh area, and we have developed a conceptual plan and estimated the cost of that. I'm going to present the results of the study and answer questions that you folks might have, and I'm sure you guys will want to discuss next steps. Let me give you a little perspective to start with. You know, when you've done over 20 of these, the first thing that happens is the incumbent utility immediately goes into the community and tells everybody you're too small to do this. And I want you to know that you would be an electric utility with almost 12,000 customers. You would have retail sales of about 309,000 megawatt hours. That might not mean much to you, but it's $35 million a year in electric system sales revenues. There are 118 municipal utilities in Kansas right now. And on a nationwide basis, there's 2,011. The median size, I mean, this is stunning when you think about it, is 2,031 customers. That means half of those 2,011 public utilities have less than 2,031, and the other half have more.
I mean, there are municipal electric utilities out there that have 800 customers, have 1,000 customers. And somehow they get it done, and they get it done generally at rates that are lower than the incumbent investor-owned utility. So that would put you in a class in which you would be larger than 85% of the municipal electric utilities in the country. That means only 15% would be bigger than you. So no, you wouldn't be too small to carry out this function. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the cost of wholesale power supply represents about 65% of the total delivered cost of electricity. To me, it's the one thing that an electric utility organization has to focus on. Some cities, some investor-owned utilities are good at it. Some are not so good at it. The ones that are not good at it end up with high price rates, and we think there's an opportunity here for you. The acquisition cost, of course, is a key input parameter in the pro forma, and the severance and reintegration costs are key. So those are the main factors that we try to develop in preparing the pro forma. What we found when we examined your marketplace here is that the actual reserve margins exceed the regional standards. That may or may not mean anything to you, but let me explain to you. Let's say that on the hottest day in Kansas in the summer, that you need, say, 20,000 megawatts of generating capacity to be able to meet the needs of this state. Well, there's going to be a reserve margin requirement. It ranges from 12 to 20% across the country. And so, maybe you would have 2,000 or 3,000 megawatts of installed capacity that's just sitting there waiting for another power plant to fail or a transmission line to go out of service or whatever. So having excess capacity is a requirement to be able to meet the continuous needs of your electric customers. The standard in this part of the country is 12%. You have about a 21% reserve margin. What that means is that your supply significantly exceeds the requirements. My experience says when you encounter excess supply, that's an opportunity to drive prices down. And we found that in other places that we worked. We think you have an opportunity to do the same thing there. One of the real keys in the math here of this financial analysis is that we think it's pretty important for you to be able to secure wholesale power at a price lower than what your incumbent provider is charging themselves for wholesale power. We think you can do that, and that's a real important consideration. We think you can buy power and generate your own power in a combination portfolio that would drive costs down, that would create that economic advantage that you're looking for. The purchase price at the end of the day will be determined either through negotiations with the company, or there is a state statutory process that will set the price. When we do this analysis, we look at things like the values of publicly traded utilities, and we can put that on a dollars per customer basis or a dollars per megawatt hour basis, and then we can compare it at your scale to see what that might be worth. We looked at the replacement cost of the distribution system of your provider, and that sort of stuff's available in publicly available records. We've been involved in recent arbitrations and negotiations that have established that value, and we take that into consideration. It's a business, and the way you value businesses by discounted cash flow analysis, and so we did that as well. And so we look at all these different strategies, and then we take some averages and say this would be what we believe the purchase price that we should include in the pro forma. We did that. But it will be determined by folks outside of your control at the end of the day. And I want to look you in the eyes and tell you that. Jerry might think it's X, and if you have to go through the statutory process, there may be that moment where you say, we think it's worth $20 million. And their experts are going to say, oh no, it's worth $100 million. And there's going to be a group of people that'll do this and say, well, let's set it at 50 or 60. So you will have your experts in that kind of a process, and they will have their experts, and hopefully the number that is established will be a fair and appropriate number. As I mentioned before, the objectives of severance and reintegration is to create two electrically separate utilities that serve customers from each utility's own facilities. We go into this kind of analysis with several goals. We want to maintain the current capacity to serve customers. The customers inside the city have to be served from facilities that have adequate capacity, and the customers outside the city have to be served with facilities that have adequate capacity. We want to do that. We want to maintain reliability, and you know, you have, sometimes distribution can get fed from both directions, so if there's a fault and the line's taken out of service, you can do some switching and back it up. When you get out into the rural parts of the territory outside of the city of Pittsburgh, there's an awful lot of radially fed customers, and what that means is if there's an outage on that particular feeder, they're going to be out of service until they can be repaired. And we want to minimize cost, and our main objective here is to come up with a rational plan. It's not necessarily an engineering plan, but this is a rational plan. Here are the feeders we would build. Here are the substations we might separate, and so we estimate a cost of severance and reintegration that we can include in the cash flow model. Just to kind of give you a feel here, I guess it's pretty legible. The yellow is the city of Pittsburgh's city limits. I don't know if you can see the little black boxes. Let me kind of get your perspective here. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, and there's one out here, one right there. Those are the substations that feed the city of Pittsburgh and the area surrounding. A little bit of electric 101 here. You know, of course you know, that power is generated in power plants. Some burn coal and generate electricity. An increasing percentage of the nation's electric supply comes from natural gas-fired power plants. That's good for the environment. Actually, it's good for our pocketbooks. It's less expensive than power generated by coal. Some comes from solar. You guys have some wind generation here in this state. But it's generated in the power plants, and it is transmitted over what we call high-voltage transmission lines. You've got them in your community. They're mostly 69,000 volts. They're the taller, bigger structures that you see. Sometimes when you get out of town, they're on big steel poles or on lattice frameworks. Those are high-voltage transmission lines, and they are responsible for carrying large blocks of power from the power plants to the substations. And then at the substations, there's transformers that step that down from, say, 69,000 volts to the 12,470 volts that runs in the wires in your neighborhood. And you'll see an underground subdivision, the little green boxes. Those are transformers that step it down from the 12,000 volts to the 120, 240 that you use in your home. Sometimes in the overhead neighborhood, you'll see these round cans hanging on the poles. Those are transformers that do the same thing. So you have seven substations that serve this community, and if you'll start up there kind of at the left-hand corner, there's a brand new substation called the Frontenac substation. It's been constructed right behind the Sugar Creek Packing Company's facility, and so that's a brand new substation that Westar has recently completed, and it'll be used to serve that part of the town, inside and perhaps outside and inside of the city of Pittsburgh. If you move over toward the east a little bit, there's the DePaul substation. It's on North Joplin Street and West Atkinson. And then you move a little further east on Atkinson, and then at the intersection of East Atkinson and North Rouse Avenue, there's another substation, and that's called the Rouse substation. So that's the Frontenac, the DePaul, and the Rouse substation. Your biggest substation is the Pittsburgh substation, and it's located at the intersection of Joplin and East 4th Street. And, you know, it serves just a significant part of your community. There's a little substation over there on the east side off of Free King Highway that serves your water plant. It's called the Aquarius substation. And then the next big one is the Hudson substation that's adjacent to Highway 69 at South Olive Street, right across from your wastewater treatment plant. And then there's one way, way out here. It's 5 or 6 miles out here called the Baker substation out here. That's on East 520th Avenue and North 160th Street. And it actually serves a fair amount of that very sparsely populated area on the west side of town. One of the things that we have to do when we do this severance and reintegration is come to town, figure out where the substations are, figure out where the transmission lines, all those red lines you see there are the transmission lines within the city of Pittsburgh, and figure out which substation serves which area, because ultimately at the end of the day we've got to come up with a strategy that says if you buy the facilities and you create your own utility, which ones would you use to serve your customers and which ones would the company use to serve the remaining customers outside the city. We actually, I don't really want to talk much about this, but the blue and purple and green lines are the distribution circuits. And we have to look at those pretty carefully, particularly in the area near the city limits boundary, because that's where the severing occurs. And so it's pretty thorough analysis. We rarely do the companies give us our maps and their maps and say, go and be happy. So we have to kind of figure this out ourselves. The summary of the 20-year cash flow, and it includes the estimated purchase price, the cost to issue your debt, estimated startup costs, estimated severance and reintegration costs, and there's a fairly big contingency in there. You know, you don't want to put an analysis out there that is fraught with difficulty, and so we padded a little bit with contingency. Your estimated revenues, you have sales revenues, and you will have other revenues associated with owning and operating an electric business. All of the cash flows out are included: your debt service, your wholesale power supply, operation and maintenance expense, administrative and general, customer service, your annual capital requirements, all are included in the 20-year cash flow analysis. And we consider the pro forma assumptions as best as we can make them to be conservative. The good news is the internal rate of return on the investment is 9.6%. I don't know if you understand what that might mean, but if you personally could go borrow money, that 5.5%, and put it in a savings account that yields 9.6%, you'd probably do that all day, every day. And that's kind of the drill here. You guys have the opportunity to create a municipal electric utility. You're going to have to incur some debt to do that, but at the end of the day, the return on that investment is fairly impressive. The other thing that we notice, which is real important, is it shows profitability in all 20 years. Sometimes we do financial analysis, and we'll see in the early years that it'll be a little bit negative, but in this case it was not. This is just sort of a pictorial that I've developed so that it's kind of easy to see. The red block over there, when you see the 5.5% cost of money, and that's what we assume that you guys would borrow money at 5.5%. By the way, that's a taxable rate. There are reasons for that. I don't need to go into them tonight, but if you had a return on your investment, anything equal to or less than 5.5%, you darn sure wouldn't want to do that. The yellow area, you know, I would call that kind of the break-even range. If you were doing this for economic reasons, I might say, you might not want to do that, but you could do it, and you could probably do it without fear of losing money. The hurdle rate, to me, is that return on investment that you would say is the minimum rate of return to do this. Based on risk and rewards analysis, we think that's around 7%. If you guys if you're personal real estate investors, there will be some return on your investment that you consider the minimum that's acceptable to you. That's the hurdle rate. The light green area there, we say it's feasible, perhaps less feasible. When you start getting over into the dark green area, the further you go, certainly the more compelling the results are. Your 9.6%, as you can see, is to the right of the line that separates the light green and the dark green. The question, you know, that we posed at the beginning of this discussion was, is this something we want to carry forward with? The results from the pro forma are favorable for the creation of a city of Pittsburg owned and operated municipal electric utility. And it suggests that the city move forward. You know, part of me says, duh. You know, there's an electric utility here that's making money, and it's valuable. And if you can go in and do the same thing, and do it when you borrow money, you borrow it at lower rates than the company does. You don't have to pay income taxes. Why can't you do it less expensively and do it better? You know, the 24/7 operational aspects frighten some communities, but I will tell you, you're already in that business. You're in it in the police department. You're in it in the water department. You're in it in the wastewater department. So you know how to deliver services reliably and efficiently 24 hours a day. And to me, this is, you've got to hire some different skills, admittedly, but it's the same kind of drill. What are your next steps? And these are not necessarily in order. As I mentioned to you earlier, there's four key financial factors: the cost of acquisition, There is the stranded cost. There's a part of this, the cost of acquisition is stranded cost, and that's something we need to consider as well. And then the cost of power supply. Cost of power supply is huge. If you can get that in at a level price-wise where we think you can get it in, you know, we need to figure that out. We need to figure that out before you start spending millions of dollars, you know, is my take. So what we would suggest is that you, one of the first things you want to do is sit down with Westar and see if they're willing to negotiate this transaction with you. I'm guessing they won't. You know, every investor-owned utility I've ever talked to about this will look you in the eyes, and the first thing they'll say is, our franchise, our customers are not for sale. Well, you know, that's not a surprise because that's what they do. And so just remember, you have the right to do that. Do it here in this state because there's a state law that allows you to do that. So, you know, before everybody lawyers up and spends millions of dollars, it seems reasonable to us that we sit down with them and see if there is a better strategy that gets to the same place and does it in a way that meets their needs and meets the city of Pittsburgh's needs as well. We think you should move ahead with your power supply effort, and what that will involve is meeting with all the parties in the state that have excess power for sale, creating a bit of a power supply plan for you that takes into consideration the market opportunities in the state and may involve also self-generation. And so we need to come up with a strategy that gives you the least cost of reliable power to meet the needs of your community. And so that would be something that we think we should do up front. We can come up with some information from, I mean, the vendors will give you notional bids of prices. They won't sharpen their pencil right down to the bottom line when they're in a competitive situation, but they'll give you really good numbers. And we think it's important to find out where those numbers are. We think there's a legal thing you have to do at some point. You need to notify your current provider that you have the intention to move ahead and exercise your rights to create a municipal electric utility. You're going to have some other team members of professionals that you need to go out and select, lawyers, valuation experts, experts that will testify in the proceedings in the future. And one of the things is we want to begin to formulate your case for stranded costs. That's something the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission created. It's a concept they created back in 1996. And they said, you know, we're getting ready to move into a competitive marketplace. We've been doing that for over 20 years. And we're demanding that all of you that own transmission open up your transmission systems to wheel power, transmit other parties' power on your transmission lines. And you have to do it without any biases, even over your own company and your own customers. And so if we're going to give people the opportunity to use your transmission and they go out and get other sources of power, that's going to leave you with investments in power plants that you were counting on needing, and that's called stranded cost. And so there's a potential responsibility that you might have there. And so we want to build that case at some point in some forum. You will be arguing that case. You will be arguing a low number. They will be arguing a high number. And we think it would be good to go ahead and create that case at this point. And then every time you get a new and better number, at some point you'll get a purchase price, whether it's a negotiated price with the company or whether you go to the statutory process that has these commissioners that will actually determine what the price is. There'll be a new and better number, and you put the new and better number into the financial model and see if you still are comfortable with the conclusion. Sometimes it makes your conclusions better. Sometimes it makes your conclusions a little worse. So we think it's an ongoing process that always gives you the best information before you have to make the more costly decisions, basically. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And
I have one. Could I get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I think one for all of us.
Oh, yeah, duh.
Absolutely.
Thanks for presenting all of that information. I'm so excited that I can barely even stay in my seat, right now. I know that this.
I will high five you in a minute.
Let's be cheerleaders together.
Yeah, right.
I think, there's a long way to go
Yeah.
it may end up not working, you know? But if it does, I think the people of Pittsburgh deserve this. I think this is the main opportunity for us, and I can't wait to start engaging further in the process. So thanks so much.
I can tell you some really fascinating stories about public power reliability, because that's the first thing they say. You know, what are you going to do in a hurricane? And we have hurricanes in Florida, as you know. Well, what we're going to do is exactly the same thing you do. We're going to bring in contractors. We're going to depend on our mutual aid agreements, and we're going to get back in service. When in 2004, before the city of Winter Park started their deal June 1st, 2005, in 2004 we had that rash of hurricanes that ran through and just decimated Winter Park system because it's tree-lined oak trees, and when you have trees and overhead wires mix, it just doesn't work. And so the wires were down, and the city was busy trying to clear the trees from the road just so to get, traffic back flowing. And one thing you don't do is you don't go pulling and cutting on trees when there are wires buried in there, because you can't be 100% sure that they're dead. And so, and I'm not going to mention their name because it would be critical, and I don't really want to be critical because they've got a lot to be proud of. The company that was the incumbent provider would come into town and would provide that sort of support to the city's team, but then they would leave for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe their dispatcher would call them and send them to a different location. And the city of Winter Park actually stationed police cars at the city's boundaries to keep them from leaving the city. And that's the kind of games that they were playing with the city. And now that the city is in business and we suffered the same sort of storms, the same sort of outages, the sort of the coordination that goes on between the Public Works Department and the Fire Department and the Electric Utility Department is amazing. And you just can't do that when you're working with, a private company that has their own motives. But we found that, when hurricanes and tropical storms come through, that Winter Park always gets their customers back online before the former incumbent does. So it's not always that more employees are better. More focus is better. And so what we found is that our 15 linemen and their equipment were able to restore service to our customers quicker than the incumbent was able to come into town and do it. So, I've got all kind of stories that go along those lines, but if you talk to any business or any residential customer in Winter Park, and they would say lower cost, better reliability, and better customer service. And I think, if you're a local government, those are the three objectives that you're after. And
I think Jerry will go on until midnight.
Yeah, I will.
And I love him for it. But
I
there's
have a couple questions.
But yeah, let's get to hopefully there's some questions.
What are the factors that you found in Pittsburgh that would lead to our profitability? I mean, are they things that are variable?
The one thing that we noticed that caught our attention immediately, and the reason that it did is we've seen the same thing happen in Florida. That is the difference between in the power supply world, the standards for reserve margin versus actual, 12% versus 21%. If you've got excess capacity, prices go down, and we saw that immediately. Actually, in our effort of working on the financial model, we talked to some of the power suppliers here in the state. And normally you find long-term contracts, 20 years or whatever, and sometimes prices are high. And we had one say, we've been talking to our board about shorter contracts and lower prices. And so we found that. We expected it. And so we think that's an opportunity for you guys to harvest that value. So that would be probably the main thing that we found. And we see that as a reason that you could be more profitable.
So were you able, just from the cursory looks that you probably did, to assess the quality of the existing substations? I mean, how does the process work that we would purchase the substations? Is that typically how it works, and what's
typically what you do? And it's a little bit like saying I want to buy a car. Does it include a remote control to start it? Well, it may or may not, and it really probably doesn't affect the price all that much. When you do valuations based on cash flow projections, like you do for any business, or you do a valuation based on a publicly traded company and you scale it back to a Pittsburgh size utility, you know, truthfully, you make the case that the substations all belong to you. At the end of the day, you don't want them all, and you're gonna negotiate with the company, and you're gonna say, we want this substation, we want that substation. In Winter Park's case, they had to build a new substation on one side of town, and then on the other side of town, the company and the city negotiated to split the substation. There's actually a fence that, you know, goes right down the middle of the substation, and this part of the substation belongs to the city, and this part over here belongs to the company. We would not suggest that in any case that you would buy what's the high voltage side, the transmission side. We have no interest in their transmission, nor being in the high voltage part of the substation business. And so, you know, that's a little bit negotiated with the company, but at the end of the day, there'll be some substations that you will get as a part of the transaction. There'll be some substations that they keep, and there probably will be some that you split.
Why was Winter Park, Florida picked to compare what they did with what we might consider doing?
Because there's not been very many done in this country in the last 50 years.
So we had to go to Winter Park, Florida to find somebody that did it?
You can't find anybody in Kansas, so you pick the state. I mean, if it's not Kansas, Winter Park's as good as anything.
So tell us a little bit about Winter Park. How are they the same situation we're in?
Fairly similar. You're a little more rural on the peripheral than Winter Park is. Winter Park is a bedroom community to the city of Orlando, so it's kind of surrounded in suburban population. One of the sort of negatives, if you will, about Winter Park is there's really not a lot of opportunity for growth in sales. It's totally landlocked. And so, but other than that, from a population point of view, number of customers, so on, it's pretty similar.
What is the population of Winter Park?
It's 29,000, I believe. They have 14,000 customers. You guys, give or take, will have around 12. So it's pretty similar size utility.
Were you able to introduce alternative solar and?
We do have solar. And actually, we just entered into a contract earlier this year for 10 megawatts of solar that the Florida Municipal Power Agency is putting together for its members. But we have a really small on-site solar project, and then there'll be the 10 megawatt solar project that we will get 10 megawatts of output, but it's not located in Winter Park.
You talked earlier on one of your slides about control local infrastructure.
Right.
Are you intimating that our infrastructure is lacking, or that we could do better, or?
Well, let me give you a Winter Park example. Winter Park has been at this for, what are we, approaching 15 years, I guess. And if you look at what the Winter Park customers have paid for electricity compared to what they would be paying if they were still on the incumbent utility, they've saved a bunch of money in their rates. And they're spending $4 million a year, the city is, to bury all of the overhead power lines. That's what I mean by saying you can make the local decisions about your infrastructure. Winter Park went through the Charlie Francis and Jean hurricane situation, and they were without electric power for a long, long time because of trees bringing the wires down. And they decided as a community they don't want to experience that again. And so they're, you know, and the key here in Winter Park is the same as I believe here, is they saw the decrease in bulk power supply cost as the opportunity to do two things: bring the rates down, which it has, and also use that margin to invest in underground electric. And they're on target. They'll be done in another 6 or 7 years.
One other question. You talked about stranded cost responsibility.
Right.
Talk a little bit more about what that means.
I think it's a bizarre concept, personally. It would be like if you decided you wanted to go into business, whatever it might be, and you manufacture gadgets, and you went out and borrowed money, you got a mortgage on your home, whatever, you spent a few $100,000 to build this gadget factory. And 5 years from now, your marketplace, your customers dried up, and they weren't buying your gadgets anymore. And now you're out of your investment that you made in the gadget factory. The theory of stranded cost says that your old customers should bear responsibility for that that investment that you made, that you counted on them to keep buying gadgets from you. It's that kind of a concept.
Was Winter Park available, could they retain some of the employees that were part of the investor-owned
Yes, they did.
utility? Like, how does that?
Actually, you know, most investor-owned utilities are in a constant cost-cutting mode, constant. And the way they do that is they shrink the workforce, and so the guys that have been around the longest, that know the most about the system, seem to be the ones that are shown the door. And it was very easy for the city of Winter Park to pick up those employees. Now, what Winter Park did, and you know, as you guys move forward, you might have similar thoughts. Out of the blocks, they made the decision that they were not going to hire employees. And so we went out and we got a contractor in the business of performing operation and maintenance and constructing distribution facilities. And so the contractor came in and did all of that for us, and they hired the workforce, and most all of the employees came from the incumbent utility. Now, and this is, you know, some years later, 10 years later, the city of Winter Park decided to bring it in-house, and so they basically terminated the contract with the contractor and have hired those employees, and they're now city employees. The goal there was to sort of learn the process.
Sure.
It's under, let it go.
It's not a day old, Jerry.
Not a day old, I've already broken it. So the city said, we're not sure how to do this. We want to bring in an experienced contractor to do it for us as a first step. I think it was a wise decision. And after 10 years of experience, they said, okay, we're ready.
I understand that concept.
So what does the transition period look like between, you know, switching from?
Do you like the answer? It depends. You know, if we move forward with conversations with Westar, and Westar says, look, you know, we're practical people. We understand you have the statutory right here in Kansas to do what you want to do. And we're not all that excited about both sides lawyering up and spending millions of dollars to fight the fight. And so we're willing to negotiate with you in good faith. I think in that scenario, you could probably get to the end game faster. Maybe in 2 years you could be in business. If you have to fight the fight, and let me tell you, sometimes the fights get ugly and expensive. I'll tell you one of the fights that Winter Park had when they went past the end of their franchise agreement. The company said, we don't have to give you the franchise fees anymore. And so there was a lawsuit, and the lawsuit went all the way up to the state Supreme Court. The company obviously lost that suit, but you never know how those things will play out. And so, you know, it could be 2 years from now if it's negotiated in a professional atmosphere. It could be 3 or 4 or 5 years from now if it's a fight.
And then after that negotiation, it'll go to the vote of the citizens of Pittsburgh?
I'm not at all confident about what you guys are required to do under your charter or not. City of Winter Park, there was a referendum. It passed basically 70 to 30%, and the reason that it did is reliability was so bad in Winter Park, the citizens basically said kick them out.
Commissioner, in Kansas, in order to start a municipal utility, you don't have to go to a vote of the people. Now, there might be, you know, we're still at a pretty macro level, and so we don't know what funding mechanisms might be in play, and a particular funding mechanism could certainly bring the possibility of a vote. Yeah.
Okay. Jerry, is very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to another special presentation, Active Transportation Advisory Board Annual.
I'm sorry, before we do that, what are our next steps, Darren?
Well, I thought we'd all breathe
Sure, yeah.
for a couple of weeks. We're preparing to come back to you with our hard recommendation. I mean, we haven't really had this information either. So it's a lot to take in, and obviously my preference is to talk to Westar I mean, they've been in business here for a long time, and that wasn't exactly clear as far as what direction we're going to go forward. So I think it'd be fair to go back with myself and some of the staff, talk to them about what they heard, what they think, and then based on those initial discussions, come back to you with some kind of recommendation about how to move forward, if that's okay.
Yep.
I know it's not exactly clarity at its best, but I think that's where we are.
It's a complicated process.
Yeah.
It is
Take your time.
it is a complicated process. Okay, now can I go on to?
Yes, you may.
Okay, now we have a special presentation by the Active Transportation Advisory Board, their annual report by Deborah McGeorge.
Yes, hello.
Greetings.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Deborah McGeorge, and I have served as the chair of the Active Transportation Advisory Board for 2018. And this was the 4th year that this board has been in existence in Pittsburgh. We saw, in 2018, we saw the satisfying completion of several projects. In particular, we were happy to see the new sidewalk on Homer Street from George Nettles Elementary down to Centennial. This was part of the Safe Routes to Schools grant from KDOT, and this grant also funded new and improved sidewalks near the middle school, and it connected Westside Elementary to the Watco Trail. 2018 was the first year for the Matching Funds program for sidewalks, and this was to help citizens improve or add sidewalks on property that they own. With the help of these funds, which came from a sales tax continuation, the owner of some businesses along the 100 block of South Broadway was able to improve the area in front of all those businesses in that block. The curb and the sidewalk had been removed previously, and parking was kind of up on the property. And so with the matching funds, the owner was able to put the curb back in, put the sidewalk back in, move parking back into the road. And it's made it a more attractive block, and it's also just much safer for pedestrians going along in that area. 2018 saw the long anticipated start of the South Rouse project. This includes a beautiful 10-foot wide multi-use path that connects the neighborhoods down in that area to the business district at Centennial and Rouse. And we're getting close to the end of that project. A couple of other small but noteworthy projects that are currently underway. One is to connect the south end of the Pisco Sunflower Trail. That's the trail that's on Rouse, and it's north of the train tracks. And right now there's a break where the train tracks are and more sidewalks south of there. So right now they're working on getting that connected. So that'll connect the Pisco Sunflower Trail to the sidewalks that continue south on Rouse and then go west into campus. So that'll create a great deal of connectivity to that part of town. The other project that's currently underway is adding a pedestrian crossing with a flashing light at 29th and Joplin. This is a part of town with high pedestrian traffic. This spring, we look forward to the addition of signs and sharrows around town on streets we've determined to be preferred bike routes. This will help newcomers to town find the best roads to ride on so that they feel safe, and it will indicate to drivers that they should expect to see cyclists on these roads. In 2018, as a board, we created a top 5 list of sidewalk or path needs around town, and I believe Cameron passed that all out to you. You can just look at that at your convenience, and I'm not going to go over all of them now, but at the top of the list is we'd like to add a sidewalk along Memorial Drive from Walnut Street into Lincoln Park. And that is the area of the center and the YMCA and the Aquatic Center and all the ball diamonds. So there is a lot of kids and families there, and they're just walking in the street on Memorial Drive. So we've, since the beginning of this board, we've recognized that as being kind of a safety hazard for the town. So where we're at right now is we did get a grant to do the engineering aspect of that project, and we're currently waiting to see if we got a KDOT grant to cover the construction costs. The announcement of that should come at the end of this month. The second item on our top 5 list is the addition of sidewalks to connect the Community Health Center on North Michigan to Joplin Street and add more sidewalks in the area of North Joplin as well. As I mentioned earlier, there's a pedestrian crossing going in that area, but there's not enough sidewalks, and there are many lower income people who don't own cars who are trying to access the Community Health Center, and they end up walking in the street or walking across just fields. With funds from Live Well Crawford County, We have contracted with an engineering firm to create options and cost estimates for that project. So we do have a start on it. The entire city staff that we work with, including Kim Vogel, Cameron Alden, and the engineers, Matt Bacon and his crew, and then with help from Deborah Anthony, who works at Community Health, and she's also on Livermore-Crawford County. They've done just an amazing job at applying for every grant that they can find to help fund these projects. But to accomplish our long-term goals, we can't rely on grants alone. We've made a lot of progress at improving and expanding opportunities for active transportation in Pittsburgh, and our hope is that we can expand on the funding available in the city budget for sidewalks, multi-use paths, and bike trails. That way we can make an even larger impact on the community. Another thing we'd like to do going forward is to make sure we don't lose sight of the master plan created for us by PedNet a few years ago. This is a comprehensive and ambitious plan that was funded by Livermore-Crawford County, and it was adopted by the City Commission. Its goal is to make the city of Pittsburgh a truly pedestrian and cyclist-friendly city, and our hope is that we can just all keep referring back to that plan for ideas and direction. So, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Deborah, I have one question.
Okay.
It's regarding the housing area across Broadway from Walmart. It's
The senior housing that's back in there?
Sorry?
Across Broadway from Walmart, so like to the west?
Yes.
The kind of the senior apartments that are back in
Correct.
there on North Walnut, yes.
I noticed that there's a lot of people, it seems, trying to cross Broadway.
Yeah.
Is there a sidewalk from that area to Broadway?
There is not.
I didn't
And
think
I would
it
love
looked-
to see one. That's the quadrant I live in, so I'm kind of responsible for that quadrant, and that is an area of concern that I have.
You better get
that
to
I have
work on it if
noticed.
you're responsible for it.
I know, you're right.
I'm like
I need to
you,
get
Patrick,
busy.
and you've probably seen what I've seen, a lot of the, power wheelchairs on Broadway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And no sidewalk for them to use.
Yeah. Improving the sidewalks along North Broadway is on the list that you got. But yes, that's we have a top 5 list, and then we have a much longer list of projects that we've talked about that we want to do, and connecting that housing, that senior housing, to the businesses on Broadway is on that longer list.
So how do you prioritize? Is it based on safety or utilization or?
You know, I think it's just with our gut, we discuss it as a group and decide. Some of it's feasibility. You know, there's big projects that we'd like to do, but they're just difficult. You know, they're costly and time consuming, and you know, we can kind of look at it and with some advice from Cameron, see that it would be a very difficult project to accomplish. So we try to pick some projects we think that can get done, but also, you know, look at it from a standpoint as how many people use this area, how safe is it.
And there's also the other balance is, I mean, because there's so many safety issues in Pittsburgh as far as pedestrians. Like you said, there's motorized people driving down Broadway. But when you start connecting everything up, the challenge, I don't know how many engineering firms we've worked with to try to get across Atkinson, right at Broadway. I mean, the dollar figure to do that is so massive, but if you could connect the people staying at the hotels with the restaurants, and you would kill all that car traffic from people pulling out and driving 3 blocks to go to all of the restaurants stacked there. But it is unbelievable with that turn on that curve, how hard it is to get across that. And you can't just send pedestrians across, or they're going to get picked off like pigeons. So there's a few things that, safety's behind everything, but I think you brought up a great point. It's kind of by your gut, because there's just some safety issues that are so big. Unless we can address this one specific piece, all the other sidewalks along there are going to be moot, because where are they going to take you? I mean, nobody's going to want to walk from Chili's to the place next door. But we are considering every development that we consider, and we have another one that's going to be in front of the EDAC tomorrow, is, you know, you need to put a sidewalk along Broadway right in front of the North Gate development. And they're like, well, this sidewalk doesn't go anywhere. And it's like, well,
it will eventually.
It's not all going to get built at once, but the next sidewalk adjacent to you can't have that argument, because you're going to have yours and it's approaching. So they're doing a great job, but I think your list is massive, and I appreciate you guys trying to prioritize it.
Yes, I was going to ask about the area between downtown and PSU, but and that's still something that I think everybody would like to see improved with sidewalks and bike lanes. But after seeing what you have here, I'm really glad. I trust your gut too. I think I'm glad that your gut is telling you to serve these underserved populations, these lower income areas on the north. So good job. Thanks for that.
Deb, what was the name of that document you mentioned at the very end?
It's the master plan that was created for us by PedNet, and I'm sure that it's a PDF. I'm sure that Tammy can probably get it for you.
She's
Yeah.
shaking her head.
Yeah. So.
Okay, thanks. I want to get a
You're
copy of
welcome.
that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work that your committee does.
You're welcome. Thank you for your
Great job.
time.
Thank you.
Good job.
We'll move along now to another special presentation, Pittsburgh Farmers Market Advisory Board Annual Report presented by Charlie Phillips. Good evening.
Good evening. As you noticed, I'm not Brad Snow, who wasn't able to make it tonight. My name is Charlie Phillips. I serve as a member of the advisory board as a representative of the vendors. My wife and I operate Misty Morning Farms and have participated in the Pittsburgh Farmers Market for the last 4 years and looking forward to our 5th year. So kind of going back and to give a little recap of, the city's involvement in the market. The city has took over the responsibilities of the market 2 years ago. Seeing both sides of that, as a vendor, I can see the benefit and the city's role in the management of that market. Some of the things that the advisory board wanted to do going into this year was to do a better job understanding and documenting what kind of business actually takes place at our market. So in the beginning of this year, what we did is we changed our fee status and how we go about collecting the fees, and that is based on a percentage of sales. And so what that's allowed us to do is track the amount of sales that are going through our market on a daily, weekly, and yearly basis. And so this past year, we were able to the market amount of sales in the market were close to $130,000 that went through that market. So what that's allowed us to do is, one, come to you and give you a report of actually what is happening at our market, but it also allows us to go to prospective new vendors that may be looking at our city as a potential place to sell their goods. We can actually give them a hard factual number of what is the amount of sales that are taking place. One of the other things that we did as a board here in a recent meeting is actually come up with a mission statement and a set of 4 goals that we didn't have currently. So our new mission statement that we've adopted is the Pittsburgh Farmers Market operates as a dynamic, producer-only farmers market that contributes to the success of local food growers and producers by serving as a business incubator to strengthen our local economy and serve as a community gathering place while contributing to the education and health of Southeast Kansas residents. Okay, and our 4 goals for the market are: create opportunities for producers to sell their products directly to consumers, provide consumer opportunities to buy local products directly from producers, and bring together families, neighbors, visitors, and local food producers to create a sense of community and social gathering, and to provide a vehicle to educate the community on the nutritional, environmental, and economic value of buying local, sustainably produced farm products. So, looking forward to this next year, some of the board's goals are to go out and recruit and do a better job in bringing in new vendors to the market and to increase the size. Our numbers last year, we had 13 full-time vendors and 18 part-time vendors that were selling at that market. So a full-time vendor is someone who is there a majority of the Saturdays during the market. A part-time vendor is going to come in and sell possibly specialty products and only be there for a limited number of weekends. The market has received several grants. Those include the Hero Grant, the Meet Me at the Market, and the Live Well Grant. We still have approximately $16,000 left from those grants that we're going to be able to utilize in the upcoming year. Last year, the market was in the black by just over $2,000. So that is one of the improvements that we've seen since the city has taken over, that we are able to operate successfly and not in debt. So that is one of the things we're looking to increase into the future. And as a vendor, I can say that it's been a very, very great improvement. And we are definitely looking forward to it, both as on the advisory board and as a vendor. So,
Great, sounds good.
you guys have any questions of me?
What'd you say, you and your wife, what's the name of your business?
Misty Morning Farms. We're located just north of Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm glad to hear that vendors are pleased with the city's.
Yes, the overall
rendering.
consensus is
That's
that
great.
everybody appreciates. One thing that I may add that is changing is that we in the start of the city takeover, we had a market manager. Adam Vickery led the market the last 2 years. He has since taken another position. So that's one of the things we will be doing at the start of this year, is looking for a new manager. So that is one of the challenges that we will face going into it. Currently, Kim Vogel has accepted some of those responsibilities, and then also some of the other advisory board members have stepped up and taken over some of those responsibilities as well. So.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Charlie, thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. As we move forward, we'll consider the following. Review of bids, award of sale. The City of Pittsburgh advertised for bids to be received until 10 a.m. on January the 8th, 2019 for the purchase of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A, to be acted upon by the governing body at its meeting commencing at 5:30 p.m. The city's Director of Finance, along with the city's financial advisor, will present a verbal recommendation.
Good evening, Mayor and
Jamie?
Commissioners. As you recall, we've been working towards financing 4 projects within the city. The Silverback Way Street project, the Don Getteridge Sport Complex for restrooms and concession stand building, the signalization of Quincy and Rouse intersection, and the connecting street on North Walnut between 28th and 29th Street that will open up that area. In the past couple months, can't remember, it's probably back in November or October, you guys all approved authorizing resolutions which authorized those projects and gave us the green light to go ahead and get funding for the payment of these projects. The total cost is approximately $2.1 million, and that's what these bonds are sold at. We took bids today, and we'll close on the bonds on February 7th. And with that, I'll have Jeff
February
Ryan
7th.
Feldman from Springstead get up and discuss the bond sale today.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Ryan Feldman. I'm Assistant Vice President with Springstead Incorporated, based out of St. Paul. I'm a member of the service team for the City of Pittsburgh, based out of the Kansas City office. Today we had a very successful sale with these 2019A $2.1 million bonds amortized over 10 years. We received bids at 10 a.m. today in our St. Paul office. We received 15 bids from 46 banks. To ground you in, 15, is that a lot, is that a little? Kind of as a bare minimum, we'd like to see 3. That way you know that you feel good that you've gotten a good price. Pittsburgh historically receives around 4 to 6, depending on the time of year and type of bond. But 15 is the most that Pittsburgh has ever received going back to 1989. So, great day, a lot of interest, very confident that we received the best rates today. The winning TIC, the true interest cost was 2.42%. And the winning syndicate was managed by the Country Club Bank. And Country Club Bank is a frequent purchaser of City of Pittsburgh bonds. A little bit of bond trivia, they last won a bid back in 2012. So the bonds were rated AA- by S&P. The city's long-term general obligation rating was affirmed by S&P a couple of days ago. I'd just like to highlight a couple of the strengths that were highlighted and recognized by S&P. That I'll summarize by saying that the city has really controlled the controllables, where the city or the S&P has recognized very strong management with regard to the financial policies and the best practices. The long-term financial plans, the investment policy, the debt management policy, all of those that are in place here. Strong budgetary performance and flexibility. That's a statement on the annual budget surpluses and deficits as well as your fund balance. And then is also very strong budgetary liquidity, which is a statement on your total government balance sheet. So with all that said, we recommend approval of the following 2 items on your agenda, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just think the participation in this bond sale certainly harkens to the fact of how well the city of Pittsburgh is being managed, and give Jamie a hand for all the work that he and his staff are able to bring to the table and it shows in something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows how low that number is, but that's a really low number. And that's, we should be proud of it as a city. We should be fortunate that many people bid on it. And we should go out and find more stuff to build. No, I'm just kidding. There's plenty of stuff to build, but there was a lot of things that happened today, and that was by far the highlight of the entire day, was hearing what those costs were.
Country Club Bank is located.
I think it was.
They're in Kansas City.
I think it was their Kansas City office that.
I know there
that
is a
bid on
Country
that
Club
one.
Bank. I didn't know whether that was what it was. Okay. Approval or disapproval of verbal recommendation?
I move to approve.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
There's there's a bond ordinance that you will have to take a vote on as well.
Ordinance number S-1059. Consider approval of ordinance number S-1059, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A, of the City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, under the authority of KSA 10-101 to 125, inclusive, KSA 12-685, whatever that means, and SKA 12-6A01, again, and Charter Ordinance number 25 of the City, all as amended. Approval or disapprove? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Now there's a resolution you got.
You're getting your money's worth, Jimmy. Resolution number 1217. Consider approval of resolution number 1217, prescribing the form and details of the City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, general obligation bonds, Series 2019A, the issuance of which was authorized by the city pursuant to its ordinance number S-1059, passed and approved on January the 8th, 2019, and authorizing certain other documents and actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jamie.
Good job, Jamie. Thanks, Jack.
And again, thank you for taking care of the city's money as you do. You do a great job. Item D, Insurance Brokerage Service Agreement. Consider staff's recommendation to enter into a one-year agreement with Ryan Insurance LLC, in which Ryan Insurance LLC will act as the city's property and casualty insurance broker agent of record for the period beginning April the 1st, 2019.
Mayor, Commissioners, excuse me, we had 4 proposals. 3 of those we consider local, if you will. One of them was out of the Wichita area, but we're very fortunate to have enough businesses in this community that we can actually bid this thing out and improve it every year. This year has been no exception. We had 2 finalists. The process involved the written proposals, interviews, followed up with our team that we put together. We've called references. There was a considerable deliberation. Once again, it's good to have, it's a good problem to have when you have heavy competition and it's not just a clear breakaway. The unfortunate part of that is every year, so it seems we have to make a decision. It's a difficult decision, but it's one we're happy to make because we obviously get to pick a quality broker. This year, Ryan was at the top of the list, so I think we're in a good place. I definitely think overall in the last 2 years we've done part of this effort to ensure our stuff, if you will, is to make sure that we have all of our stuff listed and we actually know how old it is and where it is. And we've come a long way in the last 2 years. So looking forward to another great year. EMC is basically the insurance company that we use beneath the broker. But we always want to have a broker out there that's helping us make sure that we are in the position to best protect the assets that we do have. And so we appreciate everybody's effort this year. The recommendations before you, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that we thank them for participating in this process.
And like I might reiterate, I think it's great that we have this number of insurance providers that can come to the table and put their positions before us.
Well
and I
said.
know it's a hard job to make that decision. Do I have an approval or disapproval of staff recommendation?
I move to approve.
I second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Letter of agreement. Consider approval of a letter of agreement for the city manager for calendar year 2019. Approve or disapprove the city manager's letter of agreement.
Move to approve.
I'd have, like to have a comment on this.
There's a motion on the table. Let's get a second and there's discussion.
All right, sure.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, last year this time, a unanimous decision was made that we couldn't afford to keep paying raises every year to the city managers, so we reached an agreement that we would get it on the same rotation of the other employees every other year at the same percentage raise. We thought that was fair and maybe something that the citizens could afford to pay. This year, well, that lasted for a few months into the year and then that was changed. But this year, Mayor Johnson requested information comparing what we pay our city manager to other cities in Kansas. And I thought that was very good, useful information. So I compared what we pay our city manager to other cities our size, and actually we pay our city manager at the top of that comparison. And another interesting note that goes along with whether we can afford to keep doing this, our median household income compared to other cities our size is lower than the rest of the ones. So in my thoughts, I'm still where we were. I would like to see us pay the city manager a decent wage, something that we can afford, and on the same rotation, the same percentage. But if that's not something that we can do, all I can say is, you know, I hate to lose you, Darren, but I'd wish you well in your future job search. So,
Thanks, Chuck.
Anything else?
thank you.
Yeah, we could respond to you, Chuck, but I think it's a waste of time.
Okay.
But I'm going to anyway.
Do what?
I'm going to anyway.
Go ahead.
I think you have to look at the progress of this community and the leadership, and that's where I'm coming from. We've had a GDP growing 2.4%. We have had 2% job growth. We've had a decrease in unemployment. We have wages up over 4%. We have middle class growing 11% over the last 5 years. We have a 1.67 pull factor, which means that 0.67 people are coming in to shop. We've got a decrease in bankruptcies. We have sales tax increasing. In order for us to, one of the things I'd like to achieve during my tenure is that we have a budget based on economic growth that's sustainable, and we can have merit increases for our staff every year. But, however, these are the factors that are going to lead to that, and we have to have a leader of our community that can get this done. And that, in my opinion, is Darren. And that is why I support the contract.
Anyone else?
There's results.
I am not nearly as well prepared as Don, but
I anticipated.
Huh?
I anticipated.
No. I definitely concur with everything that she said. I served on the commission that hired Darren. I sat through the interviews. I saw the quality of people that we interviewed, and I value what Darren does, and I certainly don't want to have to go back out and look at the job pool that was presented to us initially. And you, I think in paying anyone, you have to look at the value that you receive for your dollar. And I think this is certainly understandable and easy to deal with. Anyone else?
I think any city that is experiencing the kind of growth and positive things that we are would understand that it's important to retain the people that are responsible in many ways for those good things happening. And to retain people, you need to be competitive. So we just heard that, for the first time since 1980 something, that we, have this great rating, and we just got, more bids than we've ever gotten, because the S&P even, that's not even a Pittsburgh or a Kansas thing, that's a bigger thing, recognizes, specifically he said, the management and the financial management. So we have a great team here. I have a lot of confidence in our team, and all of those stats that Dawn said, I believe her, so.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? So, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, excuse me, I fell. Okay. All those approve? Aye? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Non-agenda items and requests.
A, thank you for the review and the contract to work for another year. B, I hope you enjoy the room. It's going to continue to get better. I can't think of a better meeting to start it off with. We're knocking the mics over. There's so much good news to talk about. So staff's ready to go. 2019 is here, and we're off to a good start. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.